Good morning, students. Today let us discuss steam distillation. Okay, you know that WA by WB is equal to PAMA by PBMB, correct? And this we have already learnt in the previous class. Now same principle is being used in steam distillation. All right. Now based upon the principle of boiling of two immiscible liquids, so that principle is made use of here. Steam is bubbled through impure liquid. Now in steam distillation, steam is passed through on impure liquid. Okay. Now after passing the steam, the vapors of both they pass through water condenser. So when you pass steam through impure liquid, the vapors of impure liquid as well as the steam, okay, so both will be moving out. So they are made to cool, okay, so by using water condenser, and then you condense so that you get a two layers or two immiscible layers separately. So which are the two layers obtained? One layer is organic liquid layer and the other layer is water, okay. And how they are separated? Since they are completely immiscible, you can separate it by using separating funnel, okay. So you put the mixture in the separating funnel, open the tap of the funnel so that one layer will be in the receiver, other layer will be in the funnel itself, okay. That's how it is separated by separating funnel, okay. Next slide. This is the diagram showing steam distillation. You can see here, this is the boiler or steam generator, okay. So this long device, okay, this is the steam generator, you can see here. This is the safety tube for the steam generator, and in order to generate steam, what we need? We need water, okay. So water is kept inside the steam generator and it is made to boil by using burner, okay. By using Bunsen burner, it is made to boil so that vapors of water, that is nothing but steam, will come on. It is made to pass through this side tube, okay, and then it is made to bubble through impure liquid, okay. So in this round bottom class, we have got impure liquid or compound which is to be distilled, okay. So impure organic mixture of two that is placed here, and this round bottom flask is kept on what? Sand bath. This is the sand bath for strong heating, okay, strong heating. Then, so since the steam is made to pass through this, it is made to bubble, okay. So now vapors of steam as well as the organic liquid, okay, organic liquid, pure organic liquid, both will come out because both are miscible in the vapor state. And this method is suitable for the mixture which is immiscible in the liquid state but soluble in the vapor state, okay. Since the vapors of organic liquid and steam both are soluble in the vapor state, they will come out together, okay, they will come out together. This is the adapter and this is the water condenser, you can see here, okay, water being circulated, water inlet here, okay, this is the water inlet, this is the water outlet, so that the hot vapors when they come here, okay, enter here, they gets cooled, okay, gets cooled by the circulating water, okay, circulating water, and then it is made to pass, okay, to this adapter, okay, and then it is made to collect in the conical flask. So you can see here droplet coming down, okay, that means cooled vapors, they come in the form of droplets and then collect here, okay. So this is the distilled liquid and water. You can see two layers, okay, actually there are two layers present here. One is water layer, other one pure liquid layer. All the impurities will settle here only, they will not come out, okay, they will not vaporize, impurities will settle here itself, okay, only the pure liquid vapors and steam will come out and then here condense here, okay, condense. That's how we can separate pure organic liquid from the water, okay, but water and organic liquid should be immiscible in the liquid state, okay, but they are soluble in the vapor state, vapor state soluble, therefore they come out together, okay. Now how this mixture is separated then? This mixture is added to a separating funnel contains tap also. You close the tap and put these two layers and then open the tap just like burette, okay, open the tap. So what happens? One layer, okay. So if the organic liquid is a denser layer, it will come out first, then water layer will be present in the funnel itself, okay. That's how it is separated, alright. Next slide. Now, what is the theory of steam distillation? At the boiling point, you know that the partial pressure of water, okay, plus partial pressure of liquid is equal to total pressure. When any liquid boils, when does the liquid boil? When the total pressure of the two components, which are the two components, water and liquid, becomes exactly equal to the atmospheric pressure, liquid starts boiling. Okay, so this is the principle. The partial pressure of water, partial pressure of liquid, okay, the sum is equal to total pressure, that is becomes equal to the atmospheric pressure. Now, relative amounts of liquid and water, so these are the relative amounts. Weight of water, weight of liquid, okay, is equal to mass of molecular mass of water divided by molecular mass of liquid, okay, and partial pressure of water, partial pressure of liquid. Okay, this is nothing but similar to WA by WB is equal to MAPA divided by MBPB, which I already learned in the previous class. Okay, here instead of A we have got water, instead of B we have got liquid, that's all. All right, next slide. Here another example. Okay, aniline and water. Okay, how do you separate? So that means what are the values? Pure aniline steam distilled at 95.5 degrees Celsius. Okay, what is the pure aniline boiling point? 183 degrees Celsius. So pure aniline boils at 180 degrees Celsius. But in the presence of steam, okay, in the presence of steam, the aniline boils at 98.5 degrees Celsius. That means lower temperature. So you can save here heat energy. Okay, you can save heat energy because it boils at a lower temperature. In the presence of steam, any liquid boils at a lower temperature. Okay, so much less. So 183 to 98.5 degrees Celsius. Okay, so vapor pressure of aniline and water at 98.5 degrees Celsius are 5.73 kilopascal and 95.57 kilopascal. The relative masses of water to aniline, okay, what is the ratio of mass of water to aniline? That is equal to 18 into 95.57 divided by 93 into 5.7, that is equal to 3.23. Okay, next slide. Now, Nernst distribution law. What is Nernst distribution law? When a substance soluble in two immiscible liquids is added to a mixture of these liquids, it distributes itself in such a way that the ratio of its concentration in the two liquids is constant at a constant temperature, provided the solute is in the same molecular state in both the liquids. Okay, when you add a substance to a mixture of two immiscible liquids, what happens? It will distribute in such a way that the ratio, what is the ratio? C1, suppose 1 is one liquid, 2 is another liquid, ratio C1 by C2 is always a constant K. Okay, provided at a constant temperature, and the temperature remains constant, this ratio remains constant. Okay, suppose if the temperature changes, this ratio will not remain constant. Okay, so that is known as Nernst distribution law. Okay, next slide. Now, how to verify Nernst distribution law? Okay, you take two immiscible liquids, you know that this is applicable for immiscible liquids, correct? So you take two immiscible liquids, which are the examples for two immiscible liquids, carbon tetrachloride and water. Okay, so what do you mean by immiscible liquid? When you mix carbon tetra water, shake it well and allow it to stand, you will see two separate layers. Okay, when you allow it to stand, you will see two separate layers. The concentration of each layer can be determined by iodometric titration. Okay, you can see the concentration. Okay, suppose so you add iodine to this mixture. You know that carbon tetrachloride and water are immiscible, two separate layers will be there. You add some amount of iodine to this mixture and shake it well. Now, what happens when you shake it well? It will distribute in these two, because iodine is soluble in both. Okay, it is soluble in carbon tetrachloride as well as soluble in water. Okay, shake it well and allow it to stand. Once again, you will separately see one carbon tetrachloride layer and water layer, but some amount of iodine will be present in both the layers. Okay, so you can determine the concentration of iodine in each layer. Okay, how do you determine? By iodometric titration. Okay, so by iodometric titration using suitable indicator. Okay, usually we use which indicator for iodine estimation? Starch indicator. Okay, so by iodometric titration, you determine the concentration, you can determine the concentration Okay, so the experiment repeated by adding different amounts of solute. You add at a time one quantity, okay, another time another quantity. So like that you determine for different amounts of solutes. Which is the solute here? Iodine is the solute. Which is the solvent? Carbon tetrachloride and water. Okay. So what you find here when you repeat it for different concentration of the solute or different amount of solutes, you will see that concentration of iodine in carbon tetrachloride, okay, divided by concentration of iodine in water is equal to C1 by C2 is equal to K, a constant. Okay, you will find that concentration of iodine in carbon tetrachloride layer to the concentration of iodine in water layer, that is C1 by C2, always remains constant at 20. And what is the value of this at 25 degrees Celsius? At 25 degrees Celsius means lab temperature, this constant always remains, okay, constant. And what is the value of that? 85.5. okay, so this remains constant. Next slide. Now what are the limitations of distribution law? Okay, now this law is applicable only for dilute solutions of the solute in the two solvents. Okay, suppose you have got constant solution, this constant will not remain constant, that means 85.5 value will not be constant, that value will not get, okay, if it is constant solution. Only it is applicable for dilute solutions. Alright, the value of K will not be constant if the dissolved substance either dissociates or associates in solvents. Another thing is, suppose if the solute undergo dissociation, dissociation means suppose if it is ionic compound, okay, for example, ionic compound, their number of ions increases or number of particles increases, correct. If there is association, number of particles decreases. What do you mean by association? Two or more atoms will combine to form one single molecule, correct. Dissociation means one compound spreads up into two or more compounds, correct. So if there is a dissociation or in case association, this is what limitation, this constant ratio will not remain constant, okay, that is the meaning. Now the solute should not react with any of the solvents, okay. So added solute, you added in the previous example iodine to what? This mixture, carbon tetrachloride, water, correct. So the added solute should not react. What happens when it reacts? Some other products will be formed, correct, no? So it should not react with the either of the solvents, okay. The value of distribution coefficient changes with temperature. So if the temperature changes, the value of distribution coefficient also changes, okay. So at a particular temperature it is a constant. What is the constant value for this iodine added to carbon tetrachloride water? This ratio, that is at 25 degrees Celsius 85.5, okay. Suppose if it is not, temperature is not equal to 25, suppose something else, this ratio is not same, okay, that is the meaning. Next slide. Effect of association or on distribution law flow. Let us study now what is the effect of association on distribution law, okay. Now when a solute is associated in any one solvent, what do you mean association? Two or more compounds combine to give single compound, okay, that is known as association. Now when a solute is associated in any one solvent, C1 by C2 is not a constant, okay, this ratio is not a constant. Consider a solute X which is associated in solvent 2, okay, let us assume that a solute X that is associated in solvent 2, okay. Now how much association? N molecules, you assume that N molecules are getting associated, okay, in solvent 2, alright. Then concentration in the case of solvent 2, okay, that will be equal to nth root of C2, okay. If it is undergoing N molecules association, okay, then it will be equal to concentration in solvent 2 will be equal to nth root of C2, okay. Suppose if 2 molecules are associating, square root of C2, okay. Suppose if 3 molecules are associating in solvent 2, cube root of C2, okay. Suppose if it is solvent 1, square root of C1, like that, okay. So this is solvent 2, therefore C2, okay. So C1 is the total concentration of the solute in C1, okay, any one of the solvent. We assume that in solvent C2 only, so 2 only it is undergoing association, not 1. Therefore C1 remains same, okay. Therefore which ratio remains constant? C1 by nth root of C2, okay. C1 by nth root of C2 is equal to K constant, okay. So this formula holds good for association. of the solute in solvent 2. That is important. Suppose if the solvent undergoing association in solvent 2, in such case C1 by C2 ratio is not remain constant. Instead of that, C1 by nth root of C2 ratio remains constant. Okay. Next slide. Now what happens in the case of dissociation? Okay. So effect of dissociation on distribution law. Alright. Now assume that solute is dissociated in solvent 2. Here also we are assuming that in solvent 2 there is a dissociation. What do you mean by dissociation? One compound undergoing splitting them into 2 or more, or 2 compound dissociates to give 4, 3 or more, like that. Okay. Lesser number of compounds giving more number of compounds, that is the meaning, general meaning. Okay. So when solute is dissociated in solvent 2, okay, let alpha be the degree of dissociation. Okay, this is not A, alpha. Let alpha be the degree of dissociation. That means if there is one dissociation, 1 minus alpha will remain. That's the meaning. Okay, so let alpha be the degree of dissociation. Then total concentration of solute in solvent 2 be C2. Okay, so total concentration is C2 and alpha is the degree of dissociation. Okay, then the concentration of undissociated molecules will be in C2 will be C2 minus C2 alpha. Correct, no? C2 is the total concentration and alpha is the degree of dissociation. That means if there is one alpha undergoing dissociation, that means 1 minus alpha remains. Okay. Therefore, concentration of undissociated molecules in solvent will be C2 into 1 minus alpha. Okay. So, if the concentration solute in 1 is C1, okay, we assume that the solvent 2, the solute is undergoing dissociation. Okay, in solvent 2, the solute is undergoing dissociation. Therefore, we are considering only C2. Suppose if it is undergoing dissociation in C1, C1 should have been here. Okay, C1 into 1 minus alpha, like that. So, if the constant solute in 1 is C1, because C1 there is no dissociation, only in solvent 2 there is dissociation. Okay, then the ratio C1 by C2 is not a constant. Then which ratio remains constant? C1 by C2 into 1 minus alpha is equal to K remains constant. Okay, this ratio remains constant. Alright, next slide. Now what are the applications of Nernst distribution law? Okay, first application is solvent extraction. Okay, now what do you mean by solvent extraction? How do you explain? Okay, now solvent extraction, you consider the solvent, okay, the ether and water. Okay, you know that ether is almost immiscible with water. You consider the two solvents, ether and water. So ether and water are completely immiscible. Okay, moreover, most of the organic compounds dissolve in ether readily. You know that most of the organic compounds dissolve in ether readily than water. Okay, therefore, on shaking an aqueous solution of an organic compound with ether, the organic compound distributes itself between the two liquids according to the distribution law. Okay, so you take the two immiscible liquids, ether and water, you add, okay, you add the organic compound. Okay, then you will find that shake the mixture well, you will find that concentration of organic compound in ether divided by the concentration of organic compound in water remains constant is equal to K. Okay. Now, suppose if we get K value high, what does it mean? If the value of K is high, what does it mean? The most of the organic compound passes into what? Ether layer, because numerator increases, correct? Now how do you separate that ether layer? Ether layer you can distill making use of separative funnel. So ether layer is separated by using separative funnel. Organic compound is then recovered by distilling off. Okay, you have got two immiscible layer, ether and water. Use separative funnel to separate ether and water layer. Okay, then from the ether, how do you separate organic compound? Because the ether layer contains organic compound, correct? No. So how do you separate? By distilling off, because ether is highly volatile. Okay, distill off. So ether is highly volatile, so that you can left out with what? Only organic compound. Okay. Now next is what? Desilverization of lead. Okay, that process is also called Parkes process. What do you mean by desilverization? Removal of lead, okay, from one argentiferous lead. Okay, so argentiferous lead is an alloy of lead, okay, contains silver, traces of silver. Now how to remove silver from that? That's the meaning. Okay, that's the Parkes process. Now argentiferous lead obtained by the extraction, during the extraction of lead contains some silver, okay, traces of silver. From this, silver can be extracted as follows. How do you extract silver? Molten argentiferous lead and molten zinc is added. So you melt the argentiferous lead, okay, you get the molten form. To that you add what? Molten zinc, okay. Molten zinc and molten lead are immiscible. So when zinc and lead are in the molten state, both are immiscible, okay. While silver is soluble in both zinc and lead, but silver is soluble in both zinc as well as lead, okay. Hence silver gets distributed in both the layers, okay. So silver gets distributed in both lead as well as zinc layer, alright. But it will be 300 times more soluble in zinc. So silver is 300 times more soluble in zinc. Therefore most of the silver passes into which layer? Zinc layer, okay. So how do you separate then from the zinc layer? So you have got two layers, one is zinc layer and one is lead layer. So most of the zinc layer contains what? Silver, because silver is highly soluble in zinc, okay. Therefore silver goes, most of the silver goes into zinc layer, okay. Then you separate the two because both are immiscible, okay. Zinc and lead layers are immiscible. Slowly separate, tilt and separate the zinc layer, and then how do you separate the silver from zinc? By distilling, okay. So this process is called Parkes process, alright. Now third application is determination of solubility, okay. How do you determine solubility? Now you consider two immiscible liquids in equilibrium with each other, okay, containing a solute soluble in both of them. So one solute soluble in both the two immiscible liquids, okay. If the amount of solute you increase, you add the solute, you increase the amount of solute, okay. At a certain stage what happens? You will get saturated, both the layers get saturated. Go on, add the solute, shake it well, mix it well, allow it to stand. Like that you repeat, okay. What happens? So both the layers get saturated with the solute, okay, simultaneously. Then you find out the distribution ratio. What is the ratio? C1 by C2 is equal to S1 by S2, okay. So find out the ratio of concentration. See, you will find that C1 by C2 is equal to S1 by S2 is equal to Ka constant. Always this ratio will remain constant, okay. Now what is S1 and S2? S1 and S2 are the solubilities of the solute in two solvents, okay. S1 and S2 are the solubilities. You can calculate solubility in two solvents. Knowing the solubility of the solute in one solvent, okay, and also the value of partition coefficient, this is equal to constant, okay. Therefore you know the constant value, you know any one value, either S1 or S2, you can calculate the other solubility, okay. So knowing the solubility of the solute in one of the solvent and also the value of partition coefficient nothing but this ratio, constant ratio, okay, the solubility of the solute in the other solvent can be calculated, okay. So you can calculate the solubility in the other solvent, alright. With this chapter is over, okay. So please go through all the slides. So any difficulty, please contact me, okay. So still if you find any doubts when the offline classes, I will redo it, okay. Thank you.